This is a topic of discussion that I thought was certainly worth investing and delving into and just get the gears turning the old Alpha Omega head meat. So, Masayasu Ito, who's a vice president over at Sony Computer Entertainment, was in the midst of discussing any and all plans having to do with PlayStation VR. And you might remember PlayStation VR previously as Project Morpheus. And Project Morpheus being the fucking headset that you can strap onto your noggin and run around all crazy inside of video games. Because naturally, we just want a bunch of virtual reality horror games. Because that shit will be fucking amazing. And we don't want the eye strain that came with things like the Virtual Boy, so we don't have any red or black worlds. Though emulation for something like that would work out pretty damn well now I'm thinking about it. That'd be kind of neat. A Virtual Boy emulator right now kind of runs like assholes. So, a bucket of pickled assholes to be exact. But then again, so was the Virtual Boy. Ha ha ha! Zing! So anyway, while he was going and discussing all of this, it came up talking about having different SKUs for the PlayStation 4 with higher spec versions. So the PlayStation 4 that we all know and love, just imagine variants being made available with a better processor, a better GPU, more RAM, able to output into 4K as opposed to 1080p that it does right now. So imagine that happening currently. That would cause a great rift and divide amongst the entire gaming community, and not just consumers. I'm talking even on the development and publishing side of things, because you figure that they'd be making games and they'd have to have two different versions on the same exact platform. That could cause a lot of problems, and especially if there was titles that were made with the higher spec version in mind that can't run with the lower specs. That would be a problem. That would be a great big issue that would just be like running into a wall over and over again. Nobody wants to deal with that kind of shit. That'd be fucking awful. You know, that is like shitting out a broken glass tube awful. Because then you have a bunch of people who say, well, I really want this and I buy your system, but now I can't play this. What the fuck did you do? And that would run rampage over and over and over again. I mean, the simple conclusion would be just to bring out something such as a PlayStation 5, since the typical lifespan of any hardware cycle in the console business is about 5 years. Though if you look at Sony's track record with the PlayStation 4, typically they go for about a decade. PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, which will be 10 years old next year. Wow, fucking time flies, right? So, thinking about that, what if in the middle of their lifespan they decide to go and put out this beefed up model? Now, this is something that has been dabbled with way in the past if anybody's been keeping track. You know, if you look at companies like NEC, Amiga, Commodore, each one of them had variants of the same exact system, just with higher specs. So some games would work on some, others won't work so well, and then some just kind of look like shit. So you always had that. Then if you look at shit like the Sega Genesis or Nintendo 64, which had add-ons, I mean, the Sega Genesis had two separate libraries if you didn't get the add-ons, being the 32 and the Sega CD. Nintendo had the RAM expansion pack. As a matter of fact, Sega Saturn also had a RAM expansion pack, so if you went and bought those, but those were, oh, and the VCD pack, so there was also that, and no, it has nothing to do with any kind of sexually transmitted diseases. It was, you know, VCDs. It predated DVD, so there's that. But there was lots of add-ons for systems even in the past, so the idea of that nowadays isn't too crazy. We've been treating a lot of the consoles kind of like set-top boxes, and I can imagine that the companies that run them are viewing them in such a way. When you look at platforms such as Apple and Android, for example, you got the Android platform and the iOS platform, both of which have shit tons of games on each. There's Android consoles, and then there's the Apple TV, and a whole bunch of crazy shit. So each one of them, they have newer versions with better specs for them and newer software that's involved with each of these versions, and they can update to a certain point. Then you have games that aren't compatible with them. So while you might have an iPhone, and while you might have an Android phone, there are certain games that might not be compatible with them. The same could be said for something like this, and look at the entire PC market. There's plenty of games out there. If you don't have some of the most high-end components inside of your gaming rig, you're shit out of luck, and you won't be able to play some stuff. Now, granted, there are certain exceptions to it where you can play it with, you know, the lowest fucking settings known to man, but a lot of times it's going to run sluggish, look like shit, and kind of play like shit, so you're going to be unhappy all the while. So then you just ditch that and go and play something that is a little bit more geared towards the specs of your current rig that you have going right now for your PC. But PlayStation 4 having that, I don't know. I mean, I think that would be a lot easier for them to just do software updates and kind of just take all the stuff in there and reorganize it so that it runs a little bit better, because they got that x86 architecture inside of it, and they were mentioning, you know, we'd have to have something that's exponentially better than it for us to even consider an idea like that. And that's very true. I mean, they went with this in mind because, one, it was cheap, two, it was easy to manufacture, three, it was easy to develop for, so all this stuff made a lot of sense. And Xbox One, you know, they've been doing plenty of updates that have allowed the developers and the publishers to get more out of the system just because the way that they were switching shit around and doing these updates, so it helped a great deal in that regard. Sony has actually been doing the same exact thing, though it hasn't been getting nearly the same amount of recognition and news for people to find out about it. But this is stuff that the companies have to do. Though, if anybody's been keeping tabs, it was happening on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. So this isn't exactly the newest fucking thing in the entire world for them to make updates to make everything run a shit ton better, rather than just, you know, here's a couple extra features and the UI looks a little bit better and runs speedier. Or in the case of the PlayStation 3, when you're going on to the PlayStation store, runs like absolute fucking sluggish shit. God damn, so slow. But, moving on. Do you think that Sony would be fucking crazy to bring out a variant of the PlayStation 4 with a beefed up CPU, GPU, RAM, and able to output in 4K? I think that it would spell infinite disaster and be one of those things that would do more harm than good. I mean, you've already got an install base of, what, 25 plus million people? Do you want to go and piss off that many people that'll feel that they now have outdated hardware and now have to go and buy this new system? And before everybody says, it was already outdated, look at my PC! Yeah, I figure I'd just get that out of the way, because I already know that there's plenty of PC fans who are like, ha 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 ha, fuck the consoles, and just say shit like that. But anyhow. So I just think that, again, it would do more harm than good. You know, sure, you'd be able to squeeze more life out of it and you'd be able to offer more, but it would just be a smidge more. You wouldn't be getting ahead so much so that you'd have, like, this entire plethora of titles that were never thought possible on the previous hardware and the specs that it had. No, it would just damn you. It would damn the developers, it would damn the publishers, but most importantly, it would damn the consumers. So, realistically, I can't imagine that they would pursue something like that. Bringing up that it's an option, most certainly, it's always an option. I mean, year after year, if they wanted, they could bring out a newer version of those systems. You know, Nintendo technically ended up doing that, and people were pretty pissed off. If you look at the new 3DS, the one that came out that's got, you know, more processing speed, extra analog stick and all the other shit, it wasn't just aesthetically that looked different, and it didn't just have like a couple extra components. I mean, this is capable of doing more that the other 3DSs, being the 3DS and the 3DXL, weren't capable of doing. And a lot of people were pissed off about that because there will be titles that are relegated only to the new 3DS, and that is the only one that it can work on. That kind of sucks for everybody else. Like me, I got two Nintendo 3DS systems. I don't have the new 3DS, and I don't have any plans on getting one because I've already got two. They'd feel fucked over. Point. Period. End. People would feel fucked over. And you don't want to do that with 25 plus million people and counting. All it does is, well, it fucks up the image of a system that has plenty of years to go. Just saying. Anyway, opinions, thoughts, feelings, comment box, you already know what to do, share it around, and all the other shit. I just like having people think about this kind of stuff because you never know what the hell can happen in the future of gaming. Anyway, this is AlphaOmegaSin, as always, nerds, nerdettes, and gamers game the fuck on!